The courtroom was ice cold, but my palms were burning. Across from me, Derek leaned back in his chair, arms folded, smug smirk plastered across his face like he was already celebrating. Then he did something I'll never forget. He laughed, right there in front of the judge. In front of me. Like this was some twisted comedy, and I was the punchline. My attorney, Ms. Carter, shifted uncomfortably beside me. Do you have anything else? This won't be enough without real proof. I looked down at the folder in my lap, the one I hadn't shown anyone. Not even her. My hands trembled as I slid it across the table. My heart beat so loud it drowned out the shuffle of papers. When the judge picked it up and read the first page, his expression changed. His eyes narrowed. Derek stopped smiling. That was the moment everything turned. That was the moment the truth finally walked into the room. Have you ever been mocked, humiliated, by someone who thought they'd already won? Comment below if you've ever had to stay silent until it was time to speak. I met Derek when I was 24 years old, standing in line at a grocery store in Charleston, South Carolina, holding a sad little microwave meal and a bottle of orange juice. I just moved there for grad school psychology and I was tired, broke, and wearing mismatched socks. He was ahead of me, buying a six-pack and a single rose. He turned around, looked at my dinner, and grinned. Romantic evening for one? He asked. I smirked, catching the sarcasm. Some of us enjoy fine cuisine in solitude. He laughed, a deep, warm laugh that made the cashier smile too. I was just gonna drink this and talk to my cat. Wanna upgrade our plans and eat sad food together? It was the kind of line that should have felt creepy, but it didn't. It felt easy. We sat in his truck, eating takeout from the diner down the street. He told me he was a software engineer, recently divorced, no kids. Said he was finally getting his life together. I remember thinking, he seems safe. Kind. A little broken, but sweet. That night, he walked me to my car and said, I like you. There's something grounded about you. Grounded. I hadn't been called that before. Our relationship moved fast. Too fast in hindsight. Within a month, we were spending every night together. He'd leave toothbrushes and extra socks at my place. He'd buy groceries for us. He called my apartment home before I did. I should have seen the red flags, but I was so wrapped up in the comfort of him. Derek had this charm that felt unpolished and raw, not the kind you see in movies, but the kind that's messy and honest. He talked about his past openly. The divorce, the failed job attempts, even his temper. I used to be reckless, he told me once, lying beside me with his arm across my stomach. But with you, I don't want to screw things up. I believed him. He made me playlists, burned CDs like it was still 2005. Songs like Better Man by Pearl Jam and Gravity by John Mayer. He said they reminded him of me, something that pulled him out of chaos. And for a while we were happy. We'd go on long drives to nowhere, singing loudly and badly. We'd cook pasta and leave flour everywhere. He loved trivia nights at the pub near my place. He always knew the history questions, I knew the movie ones. He made me laugh in a way that felt rare and unfiltered. When he proposed, it was simple. No fancy lights. No photographer in hiding. Just a Tuesday evening, him sitting on the couch in sweatpants with a ring box in his hand. I know I'm not perfect, he said, but I know I'd be better with you as my wife. I cried so hard I couldn't say yes. I just nodded and tackled him. We got married 6 months later in a small garden in Asheville, with my sister Emma as my maid of honor and his friend Travis as best man. My parents weren't thrilled. They thought it was too fast, too unstable. My mom even asked me if I was pregnant. I wasn't. I just believed in him. And us. The first year was a mix of bliss and adjustment. Derek hated dishes and left towels on the floor. I was meticulous and needed silence when I studied. We argued, sometimes loudly, but always made up before bed. He'd hold me and whisper, "We're stronger than a fight." That phrase stuck. We were trying for a baby by year 2. It wasn't easy. I had a miscarriage at 9 weeks. He held me all night, rubbing my back as I sobbed into the pillow. He said, "We'll try again. You're still my everything. But after that, something in him shifted. He became more distant. Work stress, he claimed. Longer hours, mood swings, drinking more beer at night. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd brush it off. I just need to breathe, Callie. Let me breathe. That was the first time I felt like I was suffocating next to the man I loved. I tried to fix things. Therapy. Date nights. Letters slipped into his lunchbox. He'd smile, say thanks, and then forget to respond. He didn't hit me. He didn't cheat, not that I knew then. But emotional neglect is its own form of bleeding. By year 4, I was the one doing everything: bills, cleaning, remembering birthdays, doctor appointments, even reminding him to call his mom. He'd joke, "You're the CEO of this marriage. I'm just the tech support." We laughed until it wasn't funny anymore. When I found out he'd been hiding money, a secret account under his name only, I confronted him. He said, "I've been saving. For us. For emergencies." I asked, "Then why lie?" He stormed out. That night, he didn't come home. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall. Our faces frozen in time, hopeful and naive, and I didn't recognize us anymore. We separated 6 months later. No shouting. No lawyers. Just a cold conversation on the front porch. "I need space," he said. "You've had space," I whispered. He looked tired, hollow. "Then maybe I need distance." He moved out the next week. Left me with the mortgage, the bills, the silence. And still, part of me missed him. Because when you build your life around someone, their absence isn't just quiet, it's deafening. We didn't speak for months. Then I got a court notice in the mail. He was suing me for property, for assets, even for alimony. I blinked at the paper. How does someone abandon you and still ask for your money? My heart pounded. My hands shook. I called my sister, cried for an hour. She said, "He's trying to erase everything you gave him, emotionally and financially. Don't let him." That's when I stopped being sad and started getting ready. Looking back, the first red flag wasn't the money. It was how Derek made me feel guilty for needing love. I remember one night, not long before our separation, I'd cooked dinner, his favorite, shrimp linguine with garlic bread and lemon pie for dessert. I lit candles. I wore the green blouse he once said made my eyes look like moss and mystery. He walked in late, tossed his keys on the table, and stared blankly. "No wine," he muttered. My heart dropped. "I thought you were cutting back." He didn't answer, just pulled out a chair and started eating in silence, scrolling on his phone like I wasn't even there. When I asked if he was okay, he said, "Callie, not everything has to be a conversation." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd become invisible. Subtle things piled up. He stopped texting me during the day. He forgot my birthday, not the date itself, but what I'd asked for, just a quiet picnic in the park where we used to go when we were broke and in love. Instead, he showed up with a gift card and said, "Get something for yourself." No hug, no card, no thought. When I gently told him it hurt, he snapped, "Jesus, Callie, you always need something from me. You act like I'm never enough." He made me the problem. I started to believe it. When the lawsuit came, it didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like a confirmation. Like everything I feared was quietly true all along. I took the papers to my lawyer, Miss Carter, tall, composed, fierce. She read through the pages and looked up. "He's asking for equity in the house even though you paid every mortgage?" "Yes." "And half your retirement savings?" I nodded. She exhaled. "Callie, this is aggressive." I laughed bitterly. He used to say I made him feel safe. She stared at me. "And now he's treating you like a threat." Derek's deposition was the first time I saw the full extent of his two faces. In the room with the lawyers, he was cool, confident, smirking. He spoke about our marriage like it had been a one-sided burden. "She always controlled everything," he said. "The bills, the house, the decisions. I was just there." I clenched my fists under the table. That wasn't true. I begged him for input. I waited for him to care. I filled in the gaps because he left them empty. But in court, it sounded like I was some financial tyrant. like I'd steamrolled him. He never once asked to see the bills, I whispered to my lawyer. He just expected me to handle them. Ms. Carter nodded. We'll need documentation. Everything. Bank statements. Emails. Texts. Anything that proves who paid what. I went home that night and pulled out boxes from the hall closet, bills with my name, transfers from my account, grocery receipts. I had built our life, brick by brick. And now he was trying to bulldoze it. The pressure got worse. I began getting messages from Derek's sister, Jenna. We'd never been close. She always treated me like I was temporary, like Derek's next phase before the next woman. Hey, she texted one evening. Derek's just trying to get back on his feet. He gave you the best years of his life. Maybe don't make this harder than it has to be. I stared at the screen in disbelief. He gave me the best years? I typed back. He left me with bills, no apology, and now he's suing me. I'm not making anything harder. I'm just trying to protect what's mine. She never replied. At work, I kept my head down. I'm a school counselor. I listen to kids all day who don't feel heard. It was ironic. I was losing my voice while helping others find theirs. One afternoon, while sorting books in my office, I found an old sticky note Derek once left me. You make things feel easy, even when they're not. I'm grateful. I pressed it between my fingers and nearly cried. Not because I missed him, but because I missed being seen. The gaslighting got worse during mediation. He'd smile at me like none of it mattered. He said things like, I always loved you, Callie. You just got so cold. I asked, do you even remember when I begged you to go to therapy with me? He chuckled. You were always trying to fix things. Sometimes things are just broken. That was his favorite word, broken. He used it like a shield, like nothing was ever his fault because he was already fractured. But I wasn't trying to fix him. I was trying to hold us together. The worst betrayal came in the form of a storage unit. While gathering evidence for the case, Ms. Carter encouraged me to check if Derek had any undisclosed assets, anything he hadn't listed. That's when I remembered the storage facility he used to go to for work equipment. I requested access. Inside, I found 2 guitars, a gaming console I'd thought was stolen, boxes of unopened mail addressed to me, and a drawer full of financial records. That drawer was my undoing. There were checks written from my account to vendors I didn't recognize. There were notes, plans, showing he'd been building a second account in his name, using refunds from our joint purchases, siphoning money quietly. He'd been planning this for over a year. He didn't leave me out of confusion. He left me with strategy. I walked out of that unit and vomited behind my car. It wasn't just the money. It was the feeling that I'd been living in a house where I was the only one truly home. He'd checked out long before he walked out. And now he wanted to make me pay for holding things together. I gave everything I found to Miss Carter. She looked through it, her brow tightening. This is big, Callie. I nodded. He thinks I'm soft. Her smile was sharp. Then let's let the judge see how sharp soft can be. The morning of the final court hearing, I stood in front of the mirror wearing a navy blue blazer I hadn't worn since my grad school presentation. My hands were steady, but my stomach felt like it was doing backflips. My sister Emma came with me, squeezing my shoulder as I slid into the front seat. You okay? She asked. No, I said, but I'm ready. She nodded. That's more than most people get to be. When I walked into the courthouse, Derek was already there. He wore a gray suit, the one I bought him for his job interview 2 years ago. His tie was crooked. His posture was relaxed. He didn't even flinch when he saw me. Just smiled. Like this was a game. Like the person he was about to try, and financially gut was just another witness in his case. Ms. Carter stood next to me, her eyes laser-focused. Don't speak unless spoken to. And if he tries to twist the narrative, I'll object before you even blink. I nodded, clutching the folder in my hands, the one that held the documents from the storage unit. Proof. Receipts. Bank transfers. Email printouts with subject lines like confirm refund deposit sent to himself, using my account, my address, my effort. Today, I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to reveal what he tried to bury. The judge, a stern, older man named Judge Bailey, called the room to order. Derek's attorney, Mr. Green, went first. He painted Derek as a victim of emotional control, someone who had been financially frozen out of the marriage. He was not given access to financial decisions. He had no say in the direction of the household. He contributed emotionally, but was pushed aside logistically. I stared, jaw clenched, as if my 4 years of spreadsheets, sleepless nights, grocery runs, and therapy sessions had been reduced to logistics. Then it was my turn. Ms. Carter stood calmly, approached the bench, and said, "Your Honor, we have documented evidence that not only disproves these claims, but also proves financial manipulation and concealment on Mr. Webb's part." She handed the folder to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. The room was quiet. Even Derek shifted slightly, his smile faltering for the first time. The judge flipped through the documents. I watched his eyes scan the statements, the refund receipts, the email printouts, including one that showed Derek opening an account at First Federal Bank in his name only 2 months before he left. "Mr. Webb," the judge said, lifting his gaze slowly, "can you explain the origin of this account?" Derek cleared his throat. That account was for freelance work, side income. I didn't think it was relevant. Ms. Carter stepped in. The account was funded through refunds and reimbursements for household purchases made with the plaintiff's card. The defendant rerouted those returns to his private account, which he did not disclose until these documents were uncovered. The judge looked back down, then back up. "You didn't think it was relevant?" Derek's jaw twitched. "I mean, I didn't see it as malicious. But you also didn't see it as transparent." That's when Ms. Carter brought out the emails. One where Derek confirmed a refund of $1,200 for electronics purchased on my card, deposited into his account. Another with the subject line, "Got it. She has no clue, LOL." The courtroom air turned thick. Even his lawyer looked blindsided. The judge tapped the folder. "This isn't just omission. This is concealment. And it contradicts your entire claim of being shut out financially." Derek stared at the table, hands now clenched. He wasn't smiling anymore. I sat quietly, not saying a word. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just stared at the man I once called my husband and realized I'd never really known him. All those nights, I blamed myself for not being enough. All those mornings I thought, maybe if I just loved harder. It had never been me. It had always been him. The rest of the hearing moved quickly. The judge denied his request for spousal support. He ruled in my favor regarding the house. And he ordered a financial penalty for Derek's attempt to hide assets, something Ms. Carter later told me was rare but powerful. The final blow came when the judge said, "You underestimated her, Mr. Webb, and that miscalculation has consequences." Derek didn't speak to me after that. He didn't look back when he walked out of the courtroom, shoulders hunched, hands shaking. He exited the building the same way he exited our marriage. Quietly, cowardly, and too late to fix anything. Outside, I finally breathed. The air felt lighter, my spine straighter. Emma hugged me and whispered, "You didn't just win. You survived." I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. But they weren't for him. They were for me. For the woman I'd forgotten under the weight of someone else's ego. For the version of myself who once thought silence was safer than truth. For the girl who fell for a broken man and then became whole without him. I went home that night and stood in my kitchen. The light hit the countertops just right, and I saw myself in the window reflection. Not as a victim, not as an ex-wife, but as a woman who told the truth, stood her ground, and walked out of court with nothing left to prove. I poured a glass of wine, took a deep breath, and whispered to the quiet. He laughed at me in court, but I showed the judge what he hid. 3 days after the hearing, I got a text from Derek. "We should talk. Civilly." I stared at my phone for a long minute, thumb hovering over the keyboard. What do you say to the man who tried to erase you and got caught? What do you say to the ghost of someone who still has your name in his phone but none of your truth in his memory? I didn't reply. Instead, I took a shower, dried my hair, and drove to the old house we used to share, the one I now fully owned. He was standing outside, hands in his pockets, kicking at the gravel. When he saw me, he raised his hand in a half-wave. "Hey." I didn't return it. He followed me to the porch, clearing his throat. "I figured you'd want to talk. No lawyers. No suits." I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and left it open just long enough for him to follow. The house was quiet, still held shadows of us. The chair he used to toss his jacket on, the dent in the wall from a cabinet door he slammed once. He looked around and exhaled. "Still smells the same." I didn't respond. I walked into the kitchen and laid my purse on the counter, waiting. He leaned against the wall and said, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I turned slowly. "You sued me for half my life and laughed in court." I was angry. "You were dishonest." He folded his arms, eyes darting. "I didn't think you'd fight back like that." There it was. The truth under the silence. He expected me to fold. "I used to love you, Callie," he said, quieter now. "I still do. You were the only person who ever really saw me." I laughed once, bitter and soft. "You say that now, after you tried to take what I spent years building?" He walked closer, voice lower. "I was scared. I didn't know how to survive without you, but I also couldn't breathe with you." I stared at him. He thought that was an excuse? "You couldn't breathe because I asked you to show up," I said. "Because I asked you to try." "I'm not like you," he said. "You always had everything figured out. I always felt like I was drowning next to you." "You weren't drowning, Derek," I said. "You were sleeping, while I was trying to row the boat for both of us." He looked down. I opened a drawer and pulled out something I'd saved, the note he once left me on our anniversary. "Thank you for being the glue. I know I fall apart. You never do. I don't deserve you." I handed it to him. He read it slowly, then folded it once and placed it on the table. "I meant that," he whispered. "Then why did you turn me into your enemy?" He sat on the edge of a chair, elbows on his knees. "Because I didn't know who I was without blaming someone." I watched him shrink in front of me, but I didn't feel powerful. I felt finished. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to close this." He looked up. "Close what?" "Everything. The marriage. The memory. The ghost of what we thought this was." His eyes flickered. "You were everything to me." "No," I said. "I was everything for you. I held it all up while you stood still." He stood suddenly, emotion flickering through his face. "You make it sound like I never tried." I looked him in the eye. Trying would have meant showing up. Therapy. Listening. Honesty. You don't get to rewrite history because you don't like the ending. He opened his mouth. I stopped him. I pulled out a copy of the receipt, the bank account opening form with his signature, and placed it on the table. He stared at it. "You wrote this," I said. "Not me. Not the court. You made these choices." Silence. Then he nodded once, barely. "I'm sorry," he said. It was quiet, flat, almost like it wasn't real. I took a deep breath. "I forgive you," I said. His head jerked up. "Not because you asked, and not for you." I took a step back, hand on the door. "But because I don't want to carry you with me anymore." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. And maybe he was. Maybe he finally realized that the quiet girl who once cooked shrimp linguine and wore his name like armor had become a woman who no longer needed his approval. I opened the door and nodded. "It's time for you to go, Derek." He paused. "Will I ever see you again?" "Not if I can help it." He stepped outside. The porch creaked under his weight. Then he walked away. No hug. No scene. Just the sound of his shoes fading down the driveway. I stood in the doorway, watching the last shadow of him disappear into the world. Then I walked back inside and did something symbolic. I took the photo from our wedding off the shelf. I held it in my hands, then placed it gently into a box labeled past, and sealed it shut. Not out of hate, not out of vengeance, but out of self-respect. Because some things, no matter how real they once were, don't belong in the next chapter. And I was finally ready to start mine. There's a strange silence that settles in after a war ends. It's not peace, not at first. It's the absence of noise you didn't realize had been screaming in the background for years. That first week after Derek walked out of my life for the last time, I kept expecting my phone to buzz with one of his half-hearted apologies. Or a cryptic meme. Or some late-night message that said, "You okay?" But it stayed quiet. And so did I. Emma came over every other day, bringing food and distraction. "I don't know how you kept that all in for so long," she said one evening as we folded laundry together. "I didn't," I said. "I just got really good at pretending." She looked at me. "You were never pretending with us." And that's when it hit me. I had been so wrapped up in preserving a man who was disappearing, I didn't even notice the ones who stayed. People showed up in strange, unexpected ways. My neighbor, Lisa, who I only ever waved to while watering the plants, came by with a casserole and said, "I know what court does to a woman. You shouldn't have to cook this week." Mr. Price, the retired vet who always complained about garbage pickup, offered to mow my lawn. No explanation. Just did it. And then there was Jenna. Yes, his sister. She texted me 2 weeks later. "You were right. I'm sorry." I didn't know he'd gone that far. I stared at her message for a while, unsure whether to respond. Eventually I did. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She wrote back, "You didn't deserve what he did. I hope you find peace." I did too. But grief doesn't just disappear because truth finally showed up. There were nights I still cried. Not for Derek, but for the version of myself I'd buried, trying to keep the peace. I found an old photo one afternoon while cleaning. Us at the beach, me wearing sunglasses, his arms slung casually around my shoulder. I was smiling wide. He was barely looking at the camera. Even then, I was more in than he was. I stared at that photo and whispered to no one. I wanted us to be real so badly. Then I slid it into the trash bin. Because memory should never outweigh reality. The house echoed differently now. Every room felt like it had exhaled. I started changing small things, replaced the rug he hated, painted the bedroom walls sage green, added a yellow kettle to the stove because it made me feel cheerful in the morning. Healing didn't come in a flash. It came in the form of new habits. Quiet coffee on the porch, walking barefoot on the lawn, rearranging bookshelves like I was rediscovering what I liked to read, not what he approved of. One evening, I opened my old journals, the ones I used to hide in my closet like sacred little truths. I flipped through entries dated years ago. He said I was too sensitive again. Maybe I am. I'm tired of feeling like I'm trying alone. He didn't notice I was crying in the car. Each page was a breadcrumb leading back to myself. And each line whispered, "You weren't crazy. You were right. Grief has layers. You grieve the marriage, then the memories, then the potential you poured into someone who drank it like wine and never filled your glass back up. But the deepest grief? It's realizing how long you betrayed yourself in the name of love. That one took months to work through. Therapy helped. I found a counselor named Margot, mid-50s, blunt but kind. She said something in our third session that cracked me open. "You weren't just surviving him, Callie. You were parenting him." I laughed through tears. It felt like that. I was always managing everything. "And now," she asked. I thought for a moment. "Now, I'm managing myself." "Good," she said. "Because she's the only one who matters now." Slowly, I started dreaming again. Not in sleep, in life. I applied for a small grant to run emotional literacy workshops for high school girls. I got it. I painted again, something I hadn't done since college. And I started attending a Saturday morning hiking group. Nothing fancy. Just women who liked trees, air, and being left alone with their thoughts. That group saved me in quiet ways. One morning, a woman named Renee turned to me on a trail and said, "I heard about your case. I just wanted to say you were brave." I blinked. "How do you know about my case?" She smiled. "My cousin's a paralegal. Word travels when a woman doesn't go down quietly." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I did both. Because for the first time in years, I felt seen without having to lose anything to earn it. Even my parents, who'd always kept things proper and emotionally distant, began reaching out more. My father left a voicemail one evening that I'll never delete. "I didn't raise you to endure, Callie. I raised you to decide. And you did the right thing." It meant more than he knew, but not everyone stayed. Some friends disappeared after the court case. People who didn't want to choose sides. People who thought Derek seemed like a nice guy. I let them go, because neutrality in the face of injustice is a choice. And I no longer had room in my life for anyone who didn't believe me when I bled the truth in public. Months passed. The quiet became comforting. My mornings filled with purpose, not panic. My nights were soft again. No yelling, no slamming doors, no eggshells under my feet. I started hosting book club once a month. Just 5 women, wine, and stories. We barely talked about books, but we did talk about truth and womanhood and all the invisible work we do that never makes it into headlines or thank you notes. It became my favorite part of the month. One day, I found a drawing in an old folder, a sketch I'd made during my marriage. It was of a woman standing in a courtroom, holding a mirror instead of evidence. Her face was scarred but serene. The people around her were shocked, not because she held power, but because she finally used it. I wrote beneath it, "Sometimes the most dangerous woman is the one who finally stops shrinking." I framed it. It hangs above my desk now. Healing didn't arrive like a sunrise. It arrived like scattered light, peeking through blinds, resting softly on dishes in the sink, curling up beside me on lonely Tuesday nights when I realized I was okay being alone. One day in early spring, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about Derek in over a week. Not in bitterness, not in grief, not even in memory. He was gone from my daily orbit. Just gone. I made my coffee, opened the window, and let the breeze touch my face. It smelled like jasmine and lawn clippings and something sweeter than survival, freedom. My therapist, Margot, had said something that stuck with me. The end of a story doesn't have to mean the end of you. So I wrote a new one. It started small. A weekend away to the coast. Just me and a borrowed dog from my neighbor, Lisa. No schedule. No expectations. Just waves, sunburn, and the pleasure of being a woman who no longer asked permission to breathe. I took a sketchbook with me and drew the ocean. Then I drew myself, standing in it, unafraid of the tide. When I got back, I applied for a grant to expand the school's emotional literacy program. My proposal? A space where teen girls could talk freely about anger, boundaries, ambition, fear. It got approved. The school let me repurpose an old classroom no one used anymore. I painted the walls a soft yellow, bought secondhand rugs and string lights. The girls called it the Denver. They came in slowly at first, one by one, quiet, hesitant. But over the weeks, they filled the room with honesty. Tears, laughter, rage. And one day, a girl named Kayla said, "Miss Webb, how do you stop loving someone who hurt you?" The room froze. Every girl turned. I took a deep breath and answered, "You remember who you were before you made them your home." She didn't speak, just nodded. Later, she left a note on my desk. "You helped me remember. Thank you." I cried in my car that night, not out of sadness, but because I finally understood what healing looked like. It looked like passing the torch. Emma moved in for a while. She said it was just temporary, but we both knew she wanted to be near me. She brought life back into the house. We'd dance in the kitchen to 90s pop music while making pasta, laughing until we cried. She convinced me to hang art on the walls, all my own work. "You're not hiding anymore," she said. "So, let the walls reflect that." I framed the courtroom sketch, the one with the woman holding a mirror. It hangs in the hallway now, where the wedding photo used to be. On Sundays, I started volunteering at a local domestic peace center, not just for women but anyone healing from toxic partnerships. There I met Caleb. He was quiet, kind, older than me by about 6 years. He ran art therapy sessions for survivors. We didn't talk much at first. Just exchanged nods, warm smiles, small talk. One afternoon, I stayed behind to help him clean up after a painting session. He asked, "Did you ever think you'd be doing this? Tending to people's hearts after yours broke?" I smiled. It's the only thing that makes sense now. He didn't flirt. He didn't ask for my number. But a week later, he left a small watercolor flower on my desk with a note. "There's beauty in women who rebuild without bitterness." I didn't know if it meant anything romantic, but it didn't have to. It meant recognition. And sometimes, that's more powerful than romance. I planted a small herb garden in the backyard. Basil, mint, rosemary. Watching something grow under my care, not in spite of me, not because I was trying to earn love, but just because I wanted to, was revolutionary. Some mornings I'd sit beside it with my coffee and whisper, "You're allowed to thrive now." And sometimes I think I was talking to the plants. Sometimes I think I was talking to myself. I reconnected with old friends. Sierra, who moved to Austin after college, sent me a message out of nowhere. "I heard what you went through. I'm proud of you. Come visit me anytime." I did. We spent a weekend eating tacos, dancing at outdoor concerts, and talking about how life bends but doesn't break us if we learn to bend with it. She said, "You're glowing, Cal." And I believed her, because I felt it. There was no big moment. No fairy tale. Just 100 little decisions to return to myself. To trust my own voice. To listen to my body when it said rest. To tell people no without guilt. To stop saying "I'm sorry" for simply existing. To let love in all its forms, without tying it to performance. One night, lying in bed, I whispered a quiet prayer. "Thank you for not letting me stay where I wasn't seen." And I felt a deep peace settle in my chest. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was whole. If you're still watching this, thank you. Not just for staying through my story, but for holding space for me, for yourself, for anyone who's ever felt like their truth didn't matter. Because I've been there. I've been the woman who loved deeply and lost slowly. Who kept quiet to keep the peace. Who carried a relationship on her back until her bones gave out. And I've been the woman who walked into a courtroom with trembling hands and left with a spine made of steel. I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. You don't need to prove your pain to be believed. You don't need to justify walking away from someone who made you feel small. You don't need to stay just because you once said, "I do." You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to rewrite your story, especially when someone else tried to write it for you. There's a myth we're sold, especially as women, that being quiet is noble. That endurance is a virtue. That loyalty means never leaving, even when it's killing you. But I'm here to tell you the opposite can be true. Speaking up is sacred. Walking away is wisdom. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's the beginning of truth. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own courtroom, literal or emotional, I see you. Whether you're battling a toxic ex, grieving a friendship that turned cold, or trying to rebuild after years of being dismissed, you are not alone. You are not dramatic. You are not too much. You are not too emotional. You are someone who deserves to be held with care, spoken to with respect, and treated like your heart is not a battlefield. To the women watching who've had to shrink their dreams to fit inside someone else's insecurity, to the ones who gave money, energy, time, and then got called controlling for simply being consistent, to the ones who thought, if I just love him harder, he'll come back to life, I want you to know, it's not your job to resuscitate someone who chose to stop breathing beside you. Your only job is to stay alive in your own truth. And to those who've come out the other side, who know the sting of betrayal, the silence after separation, the ache of starting over, I celebrate you, not just for surviving, but for rebuilding, for choosing joy when grief was easier, for painting your walls a color you love, for dancing in your kitchen, even when no one sees, for holding space for other women like me, and maybe like you. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to hide your truth to protect someone else? Have you ever been made to feel crazy for asking for the bare minimum? Have you ever been told you're too strong, too intense, too much, when really, You were just finally not shrinking? If you've been through anything like this, I want to invite you to share your story in the comments. Because stories heal. And when women speak, truly speak, we dismantle silence. We burn down false narratives. We make room for each other. So write what you need to write. Even if it's one line. Even if it's just, I'm still healing, but I'm here. That's enough. And if you've made it this far and you're wondering what now, here's what I'll tell you. Now you live. You build a life that isn't centered around survival, but softness. You find people who don't flinch when you speak. You make meals that nourish you. You light candles on a Monday just because. You go to therapy. You cut off people who confuse access with entitlement. You become the kind of woman who no longer waits for permission to be powerful. I'd love for you to be part of this community. If you felt seen by this story, please like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps this message reach other women who need it. Not because I want a bigger platform, but because somewhere out there, another woman is sitting in silence, thinking she's the only one. Let's show her she isn't. Let's remind her that truth may tremble, but it never disappears. Let's build a place where healing is public, softness is sacred, and strength looks like saying, I left and I lived. Thank you for watching. I see you. I honor you. And I'll be here, candle lit, heart open, story still unfolding.